And again, if you have questions, just leave them in the chat and I will do my best to answer them. Okay, the next question is, and this one is a nice question. And what are the best plugins in your opinion? Yeah, so this is yeah, it will be my opinion because I don't have all the plugins in the market. I do have a bunch of plugins, both VSTs, I can't speak today, both instruments and effects. But I will show you my go-tos and I will show you why I like those plugins. So I will first talk about VSTs and then we can go for effects. And I think, in my opinion, a plugin first has to sound cool. You have to be inspired by a plugin. Either is a VST instrument or effect. If it's the visuals, if it's how it's easy to work with, if it sounds good, you have to be inspired by it. And if it's a VST instrument, it also has to sound great. How good is it when you just load up a plugin and you start browsing through some of parameters and it automatically gives you like an inspiration. It's way easier to do music that way, I feel. And that's what I search for in plugins. I don't actually search for the highest marketing plugins or the latest plugins. If I have something that I open up when I'm like in the mood to make music, which is every time. I don't know if you noticed, but yeah. So when I open FL Studio and I'm just like in the mood to make some music that I want to just forget everything else, and the first thing that I look for in plugins is that they inspire me. They give me like fuel to continue making music. So that's for me the most important thing in a plugin. I don't care if it looks funky, if it looks nice, if it looks modern, if it looks classic. I want it to look good, of course, and be easy to work with. But most important is I want to have a feeling. I want to have I want to load the plugin and I want to be inspired by the sounds that I hear, because again, it's just me and music when I open FL Studio. And I think that's that's a very good, or that's a very important thing in music. So let's go ahead, enough for me talking metaphorically. Let's go ahead and go to FL Studio and see which plugins I can show you that I think inspire me a lot. So one of the things that I struggled in the beginning when I started my journey in FL Studio was that I didn't have too much plugins. So most of the plugins that I used was from these pack instruments, and this were the plugins that I used most of the time because I didn't have money to buy other plugins. And to be honest, you can do a lot of great stuff here with these plugins. There's a lot of good sounds here, and it's always nice to work with the limitations that you have, because that makes you a better producer. That makes you a better, how can I say, when you use the resources that you have available for you, if those resources are good, nice, but if they are not, and you are just starting out, it also makes you more resilient. It makes you a better producer and makes it so that you can do music with whatever. And that's a very, very important skill. Again, going back to just you and the music, it's you that matters. Okay. So we can have here, one of the plugins that I like the most was this Close Grand. And if I load this, you will see that it sounds really cool. So you see it's very, very very dark, very moody. So it sounds really, really cool. And I did a lot of beats with this piano here. Nowadays, I have other pianos that I really enjoy. And most of the times, I go and I just use addictive keys because and actually it's good because it's one of the first plugins in my list. So as you can see, addictive keys is one of the plugins that I have in my list. So it's really easy to get. But I think the piano here, it sounds really, really cool. Oops. So as you can see, this piano, and also there's a free version of this. I think this is actually the free version. I'm not sure. Maybe this came with one of my plugins or one of my, not plugins, one of my keyboards. I'm not really sure, but it has some really dope presets, and this is the good thing about it. So, for instance, this close mix gives me a very mellow type. This gives me like a retro type if I want to do some more old school type of beats using the piano. This sounds really, really old school and really nice. There's a mono tube. Again, this is what I'm talking about. These sounds give me inspiration. Whenever I hear something from this keyboard or from this plugin, I just get inspired really quickly. There is one here that I really like, which is this Grand Noir. As you can see, it's very, very, very mellow, very nice. So this is one of the plugins that I really, really enjoy, and I use it a lot. And even if I don't use this in the final production, what I usually do is like I like to make the core of the melody with this plugin, and then I switch it up with a different one. So that's something that I really enjoy also. Let's see what else. Other plugins that I like. I really enjoy now, because I have the Keylab 61, I really enjoy the Analog Lab 4. It's also one plugin that I grab very, very I wouldn't say pretty much most my productions, but I do in a lot of productions. The only thing that I kind of don't like it is it takes a long time to load, and it's kind of, sometimes I have to wait when I just want a sound. I have to wait it so that it loads. But yeah, this has some really dope sounds. And if you want to see a more in-depth view of this plugin, you can check my Keylab 61 review, where I show a little bit of the sounds. So what else? Another thing that I always grab is Expand 2. I think if I had to say, okay, just give me one plugin that you really, really like and is the best for you, I would say the king is Expand 2. I don't know why this plugin just has everything. Whenever I want to use, I don't know, it's like it has pads, it has percussive sounds, it has arpeggios, it has pianos, it has electric pianos, organs, strings, vocals, bells, guitars, I don't know, basses. I don't usually use basses here, but there are some. I really love the vocals. The vocals here are really cool. So as you can hear, really, really dope. And this is just one of them. We have a bunch more. And as you saw, there's a bunch of vocals here. There's also strings. I really like the strings and the vocals. And also I like the organs. Whenever I'm doing some a more old school vibe beat, I like to do stuff like this. Do the going up and going down of the string of the keyboard. I really like this. So if I had to say, okay, give me one VST, outside of FL Studio, a third-party VST, I would say Expand. I think that's the most the plugin that I like the most because it's very complete. It has a lot of sounds, and the good thing about this Air pack is that it costs only 80 euros. So you have all these plugins that I usually do use a lot, and all of these were 80 euros or something like that. So it has a lot of good value for a very cheap price, at least the time that I bought it. But I would say Expand 2 is the one that I use the most because it's the most versatile plugin in this bunch. So now let's go back to effects. So effects is a different ball game, let's say. And the thing that I like here in the effects, as you can see, I have a bunch of them. I have from Air, so it comes also a bunch of plugins from Air, but I don't usually use this. I use the pump here, the Air pumper, when I'm doing like electronic dance music. I like to use the Air pumper, but even though this one is a little bit buggy sometimes. So the plugins that I like the most, first is the filter, the FL Studio filter. I love this plugin. I don't know why. It's probably because I've used it so much that I came accustomed to it, but it's one of my favorite plugins, and it's the plugin that whenever I'm in FL Studio, even when I'm mixing, I only use this plugin. It's for EQing. If I'm in the master, I'm using this plugin. If I'm on individual channels, I'm using this plugin. I use this plugin always in my productions. If sometimes I use compressors, and for compressors I can use different plugins outside of FL Studio, but for FL Studio, for making equalization, I only use this plugin. I don't know why. It's just something that I really enjoy. It's easy to work with and of control here. So that's one of my favorite EQ plugins, is the Fruity Parametric EQ2. What else? In terms of compression, my favorite plugin, I would have to say it's RR Compressor Stereo. So stereo, could be mono, but this is my favorite compression plugin. I also use it everywhere. After this one, I have also another one that I really enjoy from Waves, which is the C4. The C4 became one of my favorite ones also, and I really love this plugin because it gives me the compression capabilities of having multi-band compression, and I really love this. Even though we could use other plugins, I think this is really, really easy to use and really intuitive, and it has some really nice presets so that I can just grab and start working with. So this is my second favorite compression plugin. Then I would say that for plugins, Waves, it's one of my favorite, even though they are a little bit expensive. Nowadays, they are cheaper, but I think these type of plugins from Waves are the ones that I like the most. I really like the Cream Tape Stereo. I like Vitamin Stereo. What else? I usually use a lot of L1 and L1 Plus. I also have Isotope Ozone 8 and 9. I really like Ozone 9. And what else? What else can I do here? For reverbs, of course, the Fruity Reverb 2. This is one of my go-to tools for reverb. And I also like to use, again, you guessed it, Waves. And where is reverb? Here. I love IRL Full Stereo and Reverb. So IRL Full Stereo, I really like this. This gives me some really, really good convolution reverb. And let's go here. I like this Reverb also. It has a lot of how can I say, a lot of presets, as you can see here, and it sounds really, really amazing. Especially the plates. The plates on this one, it sounds, I don't know, it sounds really creamy. Sounds really good, especially on vocals. This sounds amazing on vocals. And for auxiliary tracks or auxiliary reverbs, to put in the whole track, I really like to use this IRL Full plugin. So I think that's it. For Delays, again, I think delay 2 and delay 3, it's one of my go-tos now, more than ever, the delay 3. So this is becoming one of my best plugins. And also again, from Waves, as you can see, I really like Wave stuff. Where is it? Delay here, the Edge Delay Stereo. I think those are the best plugins. So I think that's it. We could go on hours and hours just talking about plugins. That's one of my favorite topics is plugins, because I really like what you can do with plugins. But I also have a lot of tools from FL Studio, native FL Studio, so you don't have to necessarily have plugins outside FL Studio or third-party plugins. You can use, like I did in the beginning of my career, let's say, you can use a lot of plugins that are available natively from FL Studio, and you can do really good music with that only. And you can actually just mix only with native FL Studio plugins. I did some tutorials on that, and it's possible, and you can still have a really good result. You don't necessarily have to have third-party plugins to make good music. You can just use the techniques or the sounds that you have in FL Studio. And there's a bunch of plugins in FL Studio that I have to still go deeper and start using and incorporating in my own productions.